So whoever has proclivity towards moving to, say, airlines in Gulf, okay, Indian pilots, okay, how is life in Dubai like?
I know there's this trendy reel as well. Habibi, come to Dubai, and a bunch of other stuff happening. I did a podcast for this Canadian
Okay.
company, Failure Decoded.
Okay.
This is technically my second podcast because I've only done like educational reels and all that.
Right.
It was March of this year, I think.
Okay.
We did Failure Decoded. I like their companies. What they do is they contact entrepreneurs
Right.
from all over the world. And
Okay.
they talk about failure decoded. How did you fail and how did you succeed?
Right.
Oh,
It was a
Right,
beautiful
right,
podcast, and
right,
they interviewed me
right.
for that. And they were only looking for entrepreneurs, but then
Okay.
somehow they got in touch with me. They're like, "No, we want to hear your story."
Right. Apart from that, it's like, I mean, there is not many doing podcasts in India over this.
Hmm.
Eventually, people will start. I
Sure.
know, like that
sure.
is there. At the same time, it is like a platform to have conversations over that, right?
Sure,
Like
sure.
it helps because a person who's just starting afresh doesn't know the basic things, like the things that might sound very obvious to you as a pilot, or I as a pilot, or Chintan as a pilot, is not that obvious for a 12th pass who is just starting.
Can I
So-
tell you my story from 2008? The day one, I was sitting in my classroom with a bunch of students, all
Yeah.
about to start the PPL theory classes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I don't know if I should say this, but I was literally, I had done no aviation classes, nothing.
Okay.
I just arrived in
Mhm.
this international location doing my first day of theory classes.
Right.
And I said something along the lines to the instructor, wait, so the landing gear tires don't have any mechanical motors, mechanical instruments or whatever,
Yeah.
running the plane really high speed on the runway. And everybody's looking at me saying, what? No, it's the engines creating the thrust. Right now, for most of you guys who are watching us, that might be public information. Maybe you guys have had good access to
Yeah.
these type of informative channels. But I
Absolutely.
don't know if it was me or I remember back in 2008 when I started my training, I went and I wasn't very sure how thrust, the tires and the basic
Yeah.
concept of lift wasn't public information.
Yeah. The point is the access to information has become way easier now, and that is what this podcast is. It is to make it even more easy for the back in time. If you had to know that whether Airbus has a motor system that runs the tires, if you wanted to verify that information, then you would have to open the Airbus books, like
Yeah.
be it FCOM, FCTM,
Yeah.
or QRH, or something like that. And then only you'd come to know that is there any system like that. You'd come to know, no, there is not.
I mean, before I left India, when I went for my training, I remember my cousins or friends making jokes about, which gear are you on? How literally, think about this, yeah? Which gear are you on before you take off? And I remember these type of questions. So when I went to the training, I'm just like, wait, there's no gearbox? Wait, like what? How do you measure the speed on the runway? What? No. I mean, so these were different. I mean, so it was a different world out there.
so back in 2008 when you did your training, the access to information was very limited. And if you see right now, the access to the person who are captains in an airline is also easy, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we all
Yes.
have our Instagram channels,
Sure,
right?
sure.
In which people can directly reach out to us.
I agree.
So back in 2008, you barely would even know an airline pilot.
Yeah.
I agree with you. In fact, before I started my training, I was so happy that I had a cousin of mine who connected me to somebody who was doing pilot training, and that was the best I could
Yeah.
access. And yeah, as you're right, thank God we have these platforms.
Yep.
But the whole point of these platforms are to make sure the students don't go through the bad experiences we went through.
Absolutely.
So we're here to try to make it easier
Absolutely.
for others to
Yep,
access information.
yep, that's-
Don't go through those
Yeah.
flight schools which really troubled us.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of flight schools who went bankrupt.
Correct,
There have been a lot of
correct,
incidents.
correct.
I
Yes,
was
yes.
personally involved in such situations where
Correct.
my flight school troubled me a lot during training. So now when I meet students, I'm sure that's exactly what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
We're trying to make
yeah.
sure that we guide them. Don't go to those dodgy ones and
yep.
stay away from all the crazy
Absolutely.
ones.
Yeah. no doubt about that. The point is, the way to become a pilot is pretty much still the same.
Sure.
Okay. But more access to the right information makes it relatively easier, right? And right people who have done it, people who are in the industry. The access is as simple as putting a DM in, like sliding into a DM, right? That's what it is. Yeah. So there we are. Anyway, we didn't formally start it like we we never formally started actually. But what's up?
We're keeping it real, right? We're keeping it real.
Welcome back to Pilot Podcast, and today we have Captain Rizwan Taj with us. He is a flight and ground instructor in Dubai. Okay, for sure, most likely Indian students, the DGCS syllabus varies from that of Gulf syllabus.
100%,
Okay,
yeah.
but we get different perspectives from different parts of the world, right? That's
Sure.
what there it is, and we have been good friends for quite some time. So he was in Mumbai with his wife Tamara. Shout out Tamara. She is behind the camera right now. Okay,
She's my social media and she's the reason behind all my success online, I should say. So yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Tamara, for always being there.
So welcome to Pilot Podcast. About Captain
Thank you.
Neha and Captain Rizwan. They did a Q&A before this, but Captain Neha had her commitments, so she had to go. Okay, so I, winged engineer, will be interviewing Captain Rizwan Taj.
Thank
Okay,
you so much. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Now, I've said this already. I'll say it again. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for having me. It's a beautiful setup. I should also start off by saying you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
I'm a personal fan. In fact, I met someone in Chennai 2 days ago during a seminar, and I said I'm going to Mumbai, and I said I'll probably be meeting you guys. And it's an old friend of mine, Captain Lakshmi from Chennai. She's an instructor in one of the academies.
Okay.
She personally told me to convey her regards, and she also told me to tell you guys that she's a big fan.
Thank you. Hello,
Thank you so much.
Captain Lakshmi. Thank you for passing the message, and we'll look forward to see you someday soon. Okay. Apart from that, now there are many students or aspiring pilots that connect with myself or Chintan or Captain Neha and ask that after finishing this pilot training abroad, can they join Emirates and all? Okay. Now, the point is, yes, you went over that question already with Captain Neha.
Sure.
The point is, if someone works in an airline in India for say 3 to 5 years,
Definitely.
then they can switch to airlines.
I think that's
in
the
Gulf.
more healthy way of doing it, and
Yeah.
that's the right way of
Yeah.
doing it, right?
Yeah.
So, even if you've completed your training from one of the most biggest or the best academies around the world,
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily guarantee you that you'll immediately go knock knock Etihad Emirates,
Yeah.
give me a job today, right? So
Correct.
it'll happen at the right time, but you have to look at your experience, your
Absolutely.
nationality. So obviously, students who are Indian nationals would have the easiest access to start working from their own home country,
Yeah.
especially now.
Yeah.
You know what's happened over the
Right.
last 3 to 5 months. Indian
Yes.
leading
Yep.
airlines have
Yep.
placed hundreds and hundreds of
Yep.
aircraft orders. So
Yep.
I would say yes, even if you've completed your training abroad,
Yeah.
probably the best option to do is to start with
Absolutely.
some of your regional airline carriers, get some, a few years of experience, and
Yeah.
then yes, Emirates and all of those other big flag carriers will be happy to select you.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
and in India, if you look at the career perspective, once you have a CPL, once you have 200 hours, you can directly move to the airline.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas for most of the countries, it's you get 1500 hours, you get an ATPL, and
Yes.
then you can go for the airlines.
Exactly. Especially in Europe, you have to have a
Yeah.
European work permit,
Yeah.
which the airlines will not issue.
Speaking of which, people try to combine these things.
Mhm.
That pilot training and immigration. These are two completely separate things.
True. That's true.
Like,
And that's going to get you in trouble with the
Yeah,
visas as well.
yeah.
If you have this mindset where you're planning on immigrating
Right. Mm-hmm.
and then you're applying for a foreign visa, and those visa embassy counselors or whatever you call them, they're very crucially
Yeah.
reading your applications
Yeah.
and they want you to just go there, finish your training,
Finish,
and
yeah.
go back.
Because that is what you have applied for. You applied
Exactly.
for a student visa, right?
Correct.
So the purpose of that is to finish your training and go back to your home country,
That's
right?
true.
Because he would be, Captain Rizwan would be very, I mean, his perspective on this subject matter would be very precise because he has traveled almost across the world to and doing different basically instructional jobs. He has worked in UK, right?
So as an instructor,
Yeah.
working for my global academy, I was
Yeah.
placed in Montenegro for 3 years,
Okay.
right next to Italy and Albania, if someone's
Right.
wondering. I had no idea where Montenegro is until I arrived in Montenegro.
Right.
I also worked in the airways industry, the aviation industry.
Right.
I worked in the UK branch. I worked in Spain branch. I worked in Australia, a bunch of other locations. So
Right.
yes, I have experience doing my flight training in the US. So
Right. Mm-hmm.
I've seen the way how licenses are a little bit different
Correct.
everywhere. And I can tell you from my experience that a lot of people would look at it as an immigration aspect and you would get in trouble. Just focus on
Absolutely.
studying. Your
Absolutely.
job as a student pilot is to
Yeah.
study, not
Yeah.
look for a job
Yeah.
during your pilot training
Yep.
and distract
Yep.
yourself.
Yep.
You end up making a little bit money. But what about
Yeah.
all that money
Yeah.
you paid as fees? I know so
Exactly.
many students who would distract themselves and never complete the training on time or never complete it
Yeah.
in the way it's supposed to be done. So yeah, you're a student pilot, you're traveling abroad, great, no problem. But just study, finish,
Yeah.
come back and focus on what's required.
Absolutely. That brings us to basically long-sighted vision, right? And your overall career path and overall career growth. Like getting, maybe it might sound very attractive to get at the age of 18, $30, $40 an hour. Okay,
Yeah.
that might sound attractive. But imagine at the age of 40, if you are a captain in a well-established airline, that number would be very insignificant to you, right?
100%,
Yeah.
100%. I agree with you.
So,
Don't look at something which is
Yeah.
temporary.
Yeah.
Look at what's
Plus,
permanent.
and plus you are spending way more than that in your pilot training.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
so in short-sighted perspective, like getting the money for Saturday night's party, okay, I mean at the age of 18, maybe
a few bucks extra, yeah.
a few bucks extra. But overall career, if we look at it, then definitely try to focus on that
Yeah.
perspective more than what now.
Yeah.
Like there is an analogy of that. If a child is produced with one marshmallow or one chocolate today, or is promised 3 marshmallows or chocolates after 10 days, if the child chooses 3 marshmallows after 10 days, the likeliness of success, career success or material success in life for that child is more.
Oh,
It's
very
so-
interesting. But I
Yeah.
also want to address another real issue, which is what I have noticed. Some of my students and their parents have told me, so we plan on sending our son to one of your locations abroad. He can do part-time jobs and make the enough money for
Right,
rent and food.
Right.
I'm like, wait, maybe yes, he might have enough part-time jobs to pay for his rent and food for the month. But imagine the tremendous amount of pressure you're putting on the student. He finishes school,
Yeah.
flight training, comes back home,
Yeah.
and he has to work
Whoa.
this month to make ends meet, to pay his rent and food. And unfortunately, I've seen some students who put themselves in a situation.
Yeah.
Yes, it's okay. I did my pilot training on an educational loan as
Yeah.
well. It's fine.
Yeah.
But you should also plan in a way that you're self-sufficient, in a way that you don't have to rely on that pocket money or that extra part-time money
Correct.
to pay for your rent and food. You should at least have it covered,
Correct.
that you focus on studying, you're paying your rent and food, and that shouldn't be depending on your part-time jobs.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
basically, this notion has been carried forward when people go for a degree. So when a student goes for a degree abroad, he has 3 days of college and 4 days off.
Wow, really?
So yes, so for
Wow.
that
I know
reason,
that.
they are allowed to work 20 hours a week in some countries. So that is how they cope up. But pilot training is not a 9 to 5 thing,
So
or
it's
you have
a
to fly.
mental-
Yes, you
it's
have
a
to fly
mental
6
thing.
days a week.
Yeah.
Every flight you learn something new. Plus, it's exhausting as well. If you fly 3 to 4 hours
Exactly,
and
it's very
you
tiring.
are learning a new thing, okay, and then 2 hours of pre-flight briefing, 2 hours of post-flight
It's a
briefing.
very draining thing.
So
yeah. Drains
eight,
you.
8 to 10 hours of your day you spent at the flight school, and then you have to come back home. You have to prepare your food. You have to study for the next flight.
Wash your clothes.
Yes. So there's no time to do part-time. So if a student goes for a degree, then yes, they have time for that. But for pilot training, that is not recommended.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because initial pilot training is a learning curve, right? It is a learning curve. And in that, if someone is doing these additional tasks, it takes even longer for the person to learn this, and then certain additional training is required or something, and what
Yes.
that costs is way more than what the person has earned in
I
that shot.
personally heard the story
Yeah.
from someone just yesterday.
Yeah.
They told me that they sent a student
Yeah.
to, without naming the country, to this one
Right,
foreign
right,
country where
right.
they do have easy access to
Yeah,
jobs.
yeah.
And during the training, the guy started catching up, and
Right.
he started doing some
Yeah.
jobs, and he got so interested.
Mhm.
He never completed his training, and he is doing very well for himself, but he's in irrigation. He is in the farming and irrigation industry
Right.
in that country.
Right.
Apparently, he's making good money. But
Right.
no, but wait, the point is, you were supposed to become a pilot. What happened to your dreams?
Right.
You
Right,
went there to become a
right,
pilot,
right,
come
right.
back, fly for an airline.
Right.
And fine, you settled there, okay, but in farming
Yeah,
industry,
yeah.
Yes.
something
yeah,
else. But anyway,
Yeah,
so yeah, please
yeah.
be careful about
Yeah,
these things.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, see, the whole point of going over this conversation is aspiring pilots who want to do their flight training abroad. Okay, they time and again ask that can I do my flight training there and then settle down there? Okay, so the question we are addressing, all three of us are addressing today, is basically keep those two things separate. Okay, flight training is a separate thing, immigration is a separate thing, completely different things. Don't try to mix it. Neither will go smooth. that is all we mean.
Two boats, yeah? The example of legs on a two boat,
yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I can ask
And-
you some
yeah.
questions about your training, because I
Yes,
did
yes,
my
sure.
pilot training ages ago, 2008
Yeah.
end, 2009 and stuff. You guys did your training more recently.
Yes,
Yeah.
recently.
So
18, 19,
18,
19,
19. So I
yeah.
want to know, so that's literally 10 years later, right? So
Yeah.
a lot has changed, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
But did you guys find it more easier to access information about the aviation, the courses, the requirements? How was your journey like? That's what I want to know, starting
So
with you.
basically, yes. So basically, once we go to the flight school, before that we receive documents. So right now, every flight school has, or maybe most of the good flight school has something called as TCO, Training Curriculum Outline,
Oh, wow.
and they also have the SOPs.
Mhm.
Okay, so in the TCO, you have certain number of lessons. Let's say for private, you have 30, 40 flights. Okay, so in each and every chapter, what you are going to learn is mentioned.
And the learning outcomes.
Yes,
The learning
and then
outcomes,
let's say you are learning in your lesson 3, you have steep turns. Then
Mhm.
for that steep turns, you have to go in the SOP and study the procedure.
Mm.
So access to the information is there. You
Mhm.
just have to prepare before the flight, and then in the flight you just apply those SOPs. Definitely
Mhm.
the instructor will demonstrate you for the first time, and then you have to practice couple of time until you meet the standards.
Yeah.
So it's there, just the student has to study. That's
Makes
the thing.
sense.
So earlier, I'm sure that it won't be structured like this.
Yeah, I
But
don't remember my
now-
training.
Yes.
As an instructor, we now use the learning outcomes and exact what you think
Yeah.
in my job. But when I was a student,
Yeah.
it was very ad hoc.
Yeah.
Pilot training was considered and is considered a vocational training in many
Yes.
countries
Yes,
until
it's
now.
a
Yeah.
vocational training.
Yeah, it's changing. The
Yeah,
CBD
it is.
and then
Yeah.
a lot of stuff is coming
Yeah.
up. And
And
now
plus
it's getting
apart
better.
Yeah.
apart from this, the theory knowledge, you have certain YouTube channels as well who
Yes.
demonstrate the same
Right.
things. But again, you have to make sure that the videos which you are watching are the correct
Yeah.
ones, right?
Yeah.
That is.
I mean, have you guys? What is your opinion about the CBD, the competency-based training, which is the new terminology being used in many European flight schools? Are you aware of
CB?
this?
CBT.
CBT,
CBT,
competency-based training.
Okay.
So this is a more European concept.
Yeah, okay.
I've been involved with this. So
Yeah.
they're coming up with these
Yeah.
Lufthansa and a bunch of other,
Right.
European
Right.
guys are coming up and saying, oh, the new way of doing the pilot training
Right.
is no longer based on these old systems. It's based
Yeah.
on the competency-based system. So
Yeah.
what they're doing is a little bit more structured, a little bit
Right.
more organized.
Right.
I think that's the right
Yeah.
move in the right direction.
Yeah. The competency based training, like there are different names to it. Now I
Sure.
could wrap my mind around it.
Mhm.
Basically, it's like back in time, 90s. How was it? Like a cookie cutter, right? One syllabus for all. But abilities of every student are different, right?
100%.
So like some student grasp something in one go. Okay. Some student would grasp in 3 goes.
Yeah.
Right? So there are acceptable limits within that. Like that is how it is. So if we speak about like intelligence and hard work combination, okay, maybe some students would require relatively lesser hard work, right? Okay. So maybe lesser time is allocated into training one subject matter for that. So is that what CBT is structured
Yeah,
around?
so CBT is also basically what they do is they try to take the training and
Yeah.
structure it based on every single lesson, like how we said the
Right,
learning outcomes,
right.
and it's more structured in
So
that way.
CBT is something similar to on-demand classes like we have.
Yeah.
So everything is structured.
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
the login ID and you just
Yeah.
go in and you
Yeah.
watch the lectures which are structured
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
pace of flight training.
Correct.
So
Correct.
if someone takes little bit more time to
Yeah.
study, they can
Yeah.
watch it twice
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
thrice.
Yeah. So CBT now there is computer-based
Computer-based
training is
training.
one,
Oh, yeah, that's
and
the
the
different
one
one.
and the one
Yes.
he is talking
Yeah.
about is basically personalized training
Training,
modules.
yeah.
Okay, it's
It's no
like-
longer a number. The
Yeah.
academies are now saying, let's look at every student's strengths
yeah.
and his abilities, and then
Weaknesses
weaknesses,
yeah,
and
yeah.
train accordingly.
So that finally everyone meets at the same level and same standards
I mean,
ultimately.
Have you
Yes.
noticed in a group of 10 students, if they all started their pilot training, not everybody reaches the solo stage or
Yeah,
the PPL
yes,
stage
yeah.
similarly.
Definitely.
Why? Because they're all at the same level. You can't judge them all at the
Yeah.
same level. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
it's an obvious concept,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
it's a new
And it's-
concept implementation.
And it's
Absolutely.
also important for the student to be in the right mindset. So if some student is slow, let's say, so there is always a comparison between two students. If someone
Yeah.
does their solo in 25 hours
Yeah.
and if a student doesn't reach in 25 hours, that student kind of gets demoralized or demotivated.
Yeah, very true.
So
Right.
that should not happen because everyone has their own pace of learning.
Exactly.
Okay, so ultimately both of them will get the CPL. Okay,
yeah.
just little bit longer you took to
Exactly.
learn. So
Yeah.
there's
See,
nothing wrong with that.
I
right?
did my solo, like I was the first in my class or group
Okay.
to do it, but I was not the first to finish my PPL. In fact,
Alright.
the opposite. I was, I think, one of the last students in my group to get my PPL,
Right.
but I was first to reach my solo.
Solo.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, there was definitely, oh wow, there was definitely that, oh, I'm the first
Yes,
in the
yes.
class, but then right
Right.
back at you, you know,
Right.
like PPL,
Right.
I was the last. So
Right.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm telling you, these things happen. As
Yeah.
if you're a student who's about to start your training out there,
Yeah.
don't compete with
Yeah.
each other in the
Yes,
class.
yes,
Compete
definitely.
with yourself. I know I'm quoting some
Yeah.
famous movie statements, but your
No,
competition is with
yeah.
yourself.
Absolutely, definitely. Because the point is, this is not something that you are gonna do for today or tomorrow or next 1 month. This is what, if you are an aspiring pilot, you are gonna do this for rest of your life.
Sure.
Okay, so
true.
this is the game that ends when you retire. So if you wanna play it for that long, might as well treat it like a marathon and not a sprint, right? That's what it is. Anyway, coming back to the topic that yes, so afterwards, once so whoever has proclivity towards moving to say airlines in Gulf, okay, Indian pilots, okay, how is life in Dubai like?
Okay, so I
Like
live in Dubai.
once you are done with CPL, type
Yeah.
rating, working in an airline, getting ATPL, gaining hours,
a couple of years of flying in
maybe
India.
3 to 5 years
Easily,
in
yeah.
India. Then if you wanna move, yes, you
Yeah.
do have that option then for sure. So that time, how is
How's the
life
life?
in?
I know there's this trendy reel as well, Habibi come to Dubai, and a bunch of other stuff happening. I know there's a lot of interest in the Middle
Right.
East, and Based in Dubai, I
Yeah.
think I would definitely tell you that it's nice. It's
Right.
definitely
I'm sure.
beautiful. It's a
Yeah.
different it's a different world out there.
Yeah.
I think my personal reasons, yes, it might be a little bit hot sometimes.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think the culture, everybody respects you,
Right.
no matter which background you're from, your religious background, your cultural
Right.
background. I think that's why people are actually flocking towards the Middle East
Correct.
right now. So most of the countries, it doesn't matter. You're well
Right.
respected.
Right.
You have
Absolutely.
all your freedoms. And I
Absolutely.
think that's why it is a good place. I think, yes, if someone is considering moving,
Yeah.
it's a very good option.
Yeah.
Once you have your requirements, once you have a few years of experience
Yeah.
in India, you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know there's UAE, Qatar, and a bunch of other options in the Middle
Right.
East. Life is good. Safety-wise, I would say
Absolutely.
I definitely feel a lot more safer. Like I'm
Okay.
originally from Bangalore.
Right.
I wouldn't be very comfortable walking around late in the night in most
Is
of
Bangalore
my...
unsafe?
It's not. It's
Right.
not. But I still, when I compare it to my... So,
uh-huh.
I mean, Dubai is where
Right.
I am most of the time now.
Right.
And when I'm walking around in my hometown compared
Yeah.
to when I'm just walking around, or I let my wife go out in the middle of the
Right.
night,
Right.
I'm not worried.
Yeah.
Or
Makes
let's say I'm not in Dubai,
Yeah.
I'm on a work trip in some other country, and I know my wife is alone,
Mm-hmm.
and I completely
Right.
feel
Right.
normal
Right.
about it.
Right.
So I think that's one of the reasons as well why I feel, I literally leave my
Yeah.
phone on the table when I go to the malls, and I leave my phones on the table and go stand in a long line for McDonald's or KFC or whatever, and
Right.
I leave my wallet. Sometimes we leave our cars with the keys. So yeah, there's definitely that
makes sense.
safety.
Mhm.
I think we're used to that,
Right.
and I think that's one of the reasons I feel
Absolutely.
it's a good area.
Absolutely.
But back to the aviation.
Yeah.
If you're looking at it as a aviation job
Yeah.
market, yes, it's definitely a good one. They're expanding a lot.
Right.
They will not hire you immediately after graduation, probably.
Yes,
but
definitely.
if you're an experienced pilot in one of the airlines, yes, I think it's a good option for you. There's good
Absolutely.
requirements, and they, compensate you with
Absolutely.
good remunerations as well. So
Yep.
yeah, in a nutshell, it's a good option, I would say.
Definitely, definitely. Also, the taxes are lesser, right? So,
What taxes? We don't have taxes, right? There is no taxes. So yeah.
we pay a lot of taxes.
Yeah, there's a lot of taxes. We don't have any taxes, but there are some other things you end up paying in a way. But yes, you might not have taxes, but definitely the cost of living is
Yeah.
a lot more higher.
Definitely.
You pay tolls, I mean, yes, but still, I think it's okay. You can't compromise on safety and all
Right.
of that.
Mhm.
So I think
Right.
it's probably I wouldn't leave for anything else right,
Right,
now.
right,
So
right,
I've had
right.
a couple of my friends who are like, you've spent more than a decade in the UAE. Why
Right.
wouldn't you try to move
Right.
to
Mhm.
Canada?
Right.
And I've had a bunch of those options, but I always
Yeah.
feel like my home country is just 3 hours flight away.
Yeah.
I can always
Yeah.
visit. So I think Middle East, from that point of view,
Right.
it's
right,
easy
right.
access.
Absolutely. I mean, if I were in your shoes to decide between Dubai and Canada, I'd choose Dubai as well because Canada cool, but we have been notoriously discussed
Yeah.
not so good things
Yeah.
about
I
Dubai.
think
Not so
Canada,
good things
yeah.
about Canada because see there is a massive drug problem in
Oh,
Canada.
yeah. Also, I mean,
Like,
I would not
yeah.
want to raise my kids in
Yeah.
a society
Yeah.
where I don't have control over my kids. Like, I remember, I don't want my kids to come back home and tell me something and I have no control over. No,
Yeah.
you should not be doing this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
that's a little bit too much, I would say. We come from a different cultural background where I still feel our kids should be raised the way
Yeah.
parents
Yeah.
want them to be
Yeah.
raised.
Right, right.
So anyways, but yeah, I
and
think
yeah, definitely Dubai is multicultural. Like whole world is there, and people like move their businesses even from Western countries
Sure.
to Dubai, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty.
I think we have the highest. I wouldn't be wrong if I would say the highest population would be Indians in the UAE. I think out of
Oh.
I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sure about it. I can look it up, but I'm
Okay.
99% sure out of the 11 million
Right.
people,
Okay,
which is probably the population of Mumbai, or
right.
Right?
I don't know.
Mumbai is one
Like,
crore. Yeah.
yeah,
10 million.
Yeah,
10
10
million.
million.
Yeah.
So 11 million population of the entire country, and I think
Right.
Indians are the majority.
Right.
So I think it's a very comfortable place, I
Right.
would say. But
Yeah.
anyways, moving on from an aviation point of view,
Yeah.
the whole world is opening up. I think
Absolutely.
European airlines are also badly in need of pilots.
Correct.
Yes, recently in the US, there is a circular pass to raise the retirement age of pilots from
Yeah.
65 to 67. So if that bill is passed, then Yeah, pilots can retire at the age of 67.
Yeah, that is for FAA. Right?
FAA.
FAA, that
But what
won't
about
be-
the Australian regulations changes happened, which I think it was in the news 2 months
I
ago.
have no idea.
Yes.
So I made a
Yeah,
I do these news
Right,
updates
right,
every
right,
Wednesdays.
right,
I talk
right,
about
right.
the world of aviation,
Yeah.
any big things which have happened.
Yeah.
So on one of the Wednesdays a few weeks ago, I made this news to airmen update where I spoke about how Australia, for the first time, probably in the last decade,
Okay.
is hiring non-Australian nationals.
Oh.
Wow.
So it's information out there. I'm not promoting
Right,
it. I'm not telling you
right,
guys
right,
go,
right, right,
but I'm
right,
telling
right.
you that
Right.
it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing. The whole
Yeah.
world is looking for
Absolutely.
pilots.
Absolutely.
Australia is going to be hiring. US is also
Right.
hiring
Right.
non-US
Right.
nationals for the first time, and it happened
Right.
only
Right.
this year. But there's more pilot requirements in
Yeah,
India.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you look
yeah.
at the statistics,
Definitely.
definitely the number
Yep,
of
yep,
pilot
yep.
required in India is just phenomenal. you know,
Absolutely,
compared to US or
absolutely.
Australia.
Guys, and again, when we say anything on this is not about what you should do and should not do. It is like we provide you information and decisions require information. Okay, so our job here to provide you as accurate information as possible, and based upon this information you can make your informed decision, like what you want to do with your life. Okay,
Exactly.
we are not the ones whether you should become a pilot or should not become a pilot. We are not the ones which country you should become a pilot from and do your flight training from. But we will be the ones to tell you what we did, what we find suitable. Okay, that is what is our opinion about any of the subject matter, and based upon that you can make your own decision. And yes,
It's a free country. I mean,
everybody's
everybody's free to do what they want.
While saying that, one thing I'd strongly say is we have only your best interest in mind at any given point of
Sure.
time.
And I would always end by saying, look for some of the most important reasons
Yeah.
why a flight school is the right choice for you.
Right.
Definitely.
Good aircrafts,
Yeah.
good instructors.
Yeah.
I think these are two things which is the most important in every flight school. Yes, the management can be sometimes
Yeah.
annoying to deal with, but at the end of the day,
Right.
if a flight school is offering good aircrafts,
Yeah.
safety, don't compromise on safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't go to a flight school just because they're a little bit more affordable, but
Yeah.
they have had a very horrible safety record.
Yeah.
Don't do that. I know a lot of students tell me, oh, but
Absolutely.
this flight school it's a bit too much. Oh, but this is a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
Yes, but if they're cheaper and safer, no worries.
Yeah.
But if they're cheaper but with compromising on safety all the time, your life is worth
Yes.
more.
But ultimately, I feel like any given country, the flight training pretty much medians around the same number.
Sure.
Like if you go to the US, it'll cost something. Okay,
Yeah.
if you go to the New Zealand, if you go to Dubai, if you go to Europe, any place, it'll cost pretty much the same. 10% plus minus can be there within different flight schools, unless it is a flight school like some like big name or something. Then that is.
I mean, at the end of the day, you get what you pay for, right?
Absolutely.
If you have paid this much
Yeah,
higher amount,
yeah.
yes, it's
Yeah.
justifiable in some
Right,
ways. Maybe it's
right,
better aircrafts,
right.
newer, faster training.
Absolutely.
So yeah, definitely. But make a well-informed decision.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we are
Yeah.
only here to give you the information.
Yeah.
And as I always say, there's no blanket statement.
Yeah.
Not every Indian student has to do the exact same
Yeah.
style of training
Yeah.
in the same location of the
Yep.
training. Depending on your budget, depending on your aptitude, and
Right.
there's so many other things.
Right.
Depending on where you plan on working in your
Right.
future,
Right.
there might be one pathway which might be better for you. So
Right.
there might be another pathway which may or may not be the right for you,
Right.
but your
Right.
friend,
Yes, yes.
for,
Yeah.
for him, it's probably the right way.
Yeah.
So don't always be like, oh, my friend went to that academy, so I'm just gonna like,
Yeah.
go
Absolutely.
behind him.
Absolutely.
Blind following.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't just
absolutely.
blindly
Make sure you
follow.
do your research and then make the correct option. So
Definitely.
as many aspiring pilots are watching this podcast, so they have a question in mind. As you are a flight instructor, you would be the right person to answer it. So before day one, like let's say before the first flight, what do you expect the student to learn?
In fact, I've had this discussion with a couple of students. I expect them to unlearn any bad habits or anything
Yeah.
they have learned. A lot of times as an instructor, I'm one of the first faces students see in our academy. I'm one of the level 1 junior instructors. And what I've realized is a lot of times, because they also have a lot of access to information, they've also had access to wrong information.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of students who start the training in the beginning with a mindset or with some information, some preset notions, which is
Right.
not really true. So what I normally tell is undo and unlearn everything you've learned,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just be open, be
To
a
learning,
wide
yeah.
empty page, as they
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
and make your instructor's life more easier by being cooperative. Definitely be humble. Even if you think you know something, there's always this student in the
Right.
classroom, in a group, who knows a little bit more than the others.
Yeah,
And I know,
yeah,
and I respect him
absolutely,
for that.
yeah.
He knows it. But don't be a show-off.
Yeah.
Don't be annoying.
Yeah.
Don't be bullying the other students
Yeah,
just
yeah,
because you have done some extra aviation courses or you've learned something online. That doesn't mean you disturb the instructor all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And I have been
Yeah.
on the other end of this, where
Yeah.
this instructor is getting the student is extremely disturbing
Right,
other
right,
students,
right,
and what you're doing is you're stopping others from learning. So in a nutshell, the most important thing what I would say is just be humble, just be
Yeah.
simple. You're here to study. Even if you know this topic already,
I'm sure there would be.
until I ask you,
yeah,
don't
yeah,
give
yeah,
me the
yeah,
answer,
yeah.
and so on.
And also, like, even if you think you know it, I'm sure there would be one part of it or something that the person might
Yeah.
not have known already.
Yeah.
So pay attention.
True, but that's from the academic point of view.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking at it from a different point of view. The instructors are like calculating, and they're like,
Yeah.
wait, this guy has issues.
Yeah.
They're making mental notes.
Right.
Oh, from day one, this guy has this issue, the
Right.
psychological issue.
Right.
He's a bit
Right.
arrogant.
Right.
He's a know-all,
Yeah.
know-it-all. Those characteristics or those, they
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
they
yeah,
don't
yeah,
gel
yeah.
with a professional airline pilot. So
yeah.
eventually, what will happen is if you don't work on those
Yeah.
characters, the characteristics,
Yeah, yeah,
it'll grow, and then eventually
definitely.
it will backfire one or
Yep.
the other day. So
Yep.
I would say
Yep.
just be nice and humble.
Yeah.
Your instructors are trying to help you,
Right,
and just.
right. How is
learn.
it like flying over Dubai?
Okay, so most of the year, well, obviously it's the Middle East, so it's a
Uh-huh.
bit hotter compared to most of the other parts of the world. So yeah, in the summertime it can get quite
Okay,
turbulent in
okay.
the middle of the day, which is why we don't do a lot of flights
Right.
in the middle of the afternoons.
Right.
But generally speaking, it's nice.
Okay.
It's a different geography.
Right.
You're not gonna expect a lot of lakes and mountains,
Right.
right? So, yes, mountains, yes, but not a
but
lot of lakes.
A lot many buildings, right?
Yeah, so when you're doing your training flights,
Yeah.
you're not really towards the
City,
towards the city
part,
areas.
right.
You're mostly towards the shoreline, inlands, towards the
Okay.
desert areas.
Okay.
So yeah, you do see the skyline from far away,
Right.
but you're not really over the skyline.
Okay.
You're not
okay.
really close to the skylines much.
Right.
It's a different world out there.
Right.
I would still ask students to mix it up.
Yeah.
Maybe doing 100% training in just one type of location where it's 100%
Yeah.
flat. Maybe not.
Mhm.
Maybe is not the best. You can mix it up a little bit,
Right,
so that you have
right,
different
right,
experience
right,
flying
right.
over different
Correct,
terrains.
Correct.
Yes, because you do get
'Cause-
different perspectives when you fly, and you get to learn so many. So when
Exactly.
we were training in the US, we had a list of around
Yeah.
30 airports where we can
Yeah.
go. So we
Yeah.
used to go to different airport each day.
Sure,
so every day
sure.
we learn something new.
It's the same thing. I mean, some of the locations where the academy I work for trains in,
Yeah.
Europe and Australia, and we always have that surplus amount of locations, lakes, mountains, combination of greenery
Yeah,
and dry areas. I think you need to choose.
Definitely.
Well,
Like
based
in
on, yeah.
Florida, you have flown from Florida, right?
Okay.
So Florida is like down south Miami side. If you take VFR,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can fly at 500 foot above the shoreline, like little bit offset, like in the sea, and
Yep.
and all the buildings are like passing by.
It's
just
so beautiful.
Yeah,
and
it's
you
so
see the
beautiful.
sea along
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
row
yeah,
houses.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've been there, and then yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what.
What
yeah.
would you say would be the best pathway for a student? Like, one of my questions I get a lot
Yeah.
is I get asked on Instagram, should
Yeah.
I first do my flying
Yeah.
and then do the Indian DGCA written exams after
Okay.
I complete my CPL and
Right.
come back, or
Right.
should I start, do all the theory,
Yeah.
written exams,
Yeah.
clear, and then fly abroad? What would you say? As
It's
your
always
opinion?
recommended. Like I finished my DGC exams before going for flying, or
Okay.
before even applying for the pilot program, that
Okay.
cadet pilot program
Okay.
that I did my training from. And in my opinion, that is how it should be. That is my strong opinion, because the recency lapses otherwise. One.
Or unless you do, well, obviously.
Yes. Second is, recency lapses because to finish all 3 exams plus RTR within 6 months. Okay, within 3 months, month or 2, you can get done with DGC exams if you have computer number already. If someone doesn't have a computer number itself takes up about 1.5 to 2 months. That too, if it gets approved in first go. Okay, and if it doesn't, then another 2 months are gone. And then, basically, as soon as you get opportunity, you give the DGC exams. And so Chintan had computer number. Okay, so when he had gone to the US, he came back and then finished on CNTA's online portal in a month. And within month, he finished all 3 papers. So 30 days, he finished all 3 papers. Okay, so if you are ready to put 13-14 hours a day, sure, you can do like that. But at the same time, then there is also flying conversion required. So might as well get done with DGC exams and primarily medicals.
Wow, okay. Interesting.
Before going
what
for
would you
flight
say,
training.
just to be the devil's advocate here, just to counter that and be the devil's advocate, what would you say to people who say, but you're doing all the written exams and studying as route memory, and you're not actually understanding how flying is done. You're not really flying the plane, but you're doing all those written exams based on just mugging up, and that's what I hear people saying.
So it is actually a good ground school's part that to show and illustrate the examples what it'll look like when they go in flight training. So my point of view about it is, for me, it was way easier to understand flying because the knowledge was already there. Now is the skills time.
But do you feel like people are, okay, you understood the theory and then went and did the flying. Do you agree to many people who say that they're just memorizing and doing the written exam and
so
then they go fly?
That again is a lot of instructors' job. That because see, there is a, I believe, Japanese samurais quote saying that I read and I forget, I listen and I know, and I experience and I remember. Okay, it's like that. Okay, so if we look at flying, fundamentally what it is a skill, right? How do we develop skills? Skill is application of knowledge. So knowledge needs to be there before you apply it. Now, to your point, which is valid, okay, some students tend to mug up.
Yes.
It is not helpful. Definitely not helpful.
Especially in this industry.
In this industry, every knowledge that this is not the year that you had to remember in your history lessons when Alexander attacked so-and-so city. No, this is not that. Okay. This is for real. Like any piece of information that you gain is gonna be most likely applied in the cockpit.
Sure.
So that's why at CNTA we focus on the concepts, like understanding the concepts. Even I'm sure when you teach, you focus on the concept. Like when you understand the concept, you are most likely going to be able to apply it in different scenarios.
And I always tell my students, just because you got 75%, don't be too happy. Imagine it in the other way around. Again, it's an exaggerated example, but can you imagine your pilot saying, sorry, passengers, I'm going to put you all in trouble now because I only got 75%, and this light, I was bad in this lesson. I don't know what this button does.
Exactly.
It's like you only know how to fly a plane 75% of the time. So,
which can't be done. Like another example to your point would be, you can crash a plane only once, right?
True.
You don't get a second chance. This is as precise as anything could be. I mean, life depends on it.
Exactly.
That's
so
what it is.
I also tell my students, Don't look at your theory scores as just that number
Yeah.
which you memorized. You probably memorized and you got 80%, whatever, you got the passing mark.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
it's your life at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
while you're in the cockpit, if you don't
Yeah.
understand what's happening,
Yeah.
and by the way, just remember this one thing. You will be expected to make or create solutions to problems that don't even exist as of
Right.
today.
Right.
And I'm sure a lot of you have already seen the movie Sully. He had to come up with a procedure that did not exist. I mean, he
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
make up.
Yeah.
So the point is, okay, that's
Now
an
that
extreme
procedure
example.
exists.
And it's named after him, right? The Sully maneuver. So the point is, you will be expected to deal with situations, and you might come across as an airline pilot a problem which nobody had thought about, and you have to come up with a solution
Right.
in the moment. So always study theory or practical or whatever,
Yeah.
imagining this consequence.
Like, see, to your point, like even if I speak about it as a devil's advocate and say that you should do flying and knowledge part together, sure, okay. But if you are going abroad, okay, you learn FAA knowledge, okay, you still have to do DGCA exams afterwards. Would you know a stalling speed of an airplane before going for a flight or after coming back from a flight? Right?
Makes
Like,
sense.
okay. So in US, the approach towards training is learn as you go. Okay. So today you have a specific lesson. Say we are talking about departure stalls. Okay. Still, you gain the knowledge before going for the flight. You do a briefing before going for a flight. Okay. You learn about the procedures to overcome a departure stall. Right? You learn that. You learn the knowledge, and then you apply it in flight actually. So that is developing a skill, that is application of the knowledge, right? Now, after doing all this, then you again have to do DGCA exams because you didn't do it before going for your flight training. So take it like DGCA exams for Indian students, it would be like onboarding to aviation. You understand the
Like a
terminology.
foundation.
Yeah, the
Yes.
foundation,
Like a foundation
the basic
course, yeah.
concepts. And learn it like you want to remember it for your rest of the life. And rather than using the word remember, I'd say understand it would be the right word. So basically fundamentals, right? Like how thunderstorms are formed, okay? And all of those meteorology, navigation, all of those lessons around it.
So studying.
So do you think that was
Yeah, definitely. I think we've
yeah.
given both the perspectives
Yeah.
of some students do it before, some students do it
Yeah,
after.
yeah.
There are benefits, there are
Yeah.
advantages and disadvantages
yeah,
in both.
yeah.
I know some students who did the flying first, came back,
Right.
did it in 6 months. Yes, some of
Right.
them had to go back, do
Right.
recurrency. Yes, so
Right.
there's merits in both, but there are some really valid points
Yeah.
you've raised as well.
Yeah.
Just do your research and make a well-informed
Yeah,
decision at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So I mean, the studying for a degree and aviation is completely different. So in aviation, you don't leave anything in option.
Yeah.
And aviation is mainly focused on concepts. So if someone knows the concepts, they can solve thousands of questions. But if someone memorizes those 1,000 questions, they can only solve those 1,000 questions. And the knowledge, the concept which the student has learned, in a case of emergency, whenever he's flying, he can apply that concept. Okay, but if he has memorized the questions, then he wouldn't be able to.
Eventually, you'll know.
Yeah.
Speaking about that, you mentioned pilot training is not like a bachelor's and so on. I've had a lot of students and their parents, especially from the Asian continent, the Indian
Yeah.
subcontinent,
Yeah.
they're always telling, but bachelor's or something. I've even had parents telling me, pehle do 4 years of engineering,
Right.
get your engineering or bachelor's 3 years degree, and then we will consider sending you
Yeah.
to become a
Yeah.
pilot. Have you had those type of parents?
Yeah,
or
many,
students? Okay.
plenty.
So to become a pilot, the basic requirement is 10 plus 2 with maths and physics.
Sure.
So if a person is ready at that point of time, if a person is confident, yes, I want to do this, then that is the right time to start.
What would you say about programs, which I mean, my academy has as well, and a bunch of other academies do offer those as well. There's a 3-year bachelor's in aviation program which integrates a 12-month pilot
Yes, yes.
training program. Would
Yeah.
you
With
support
the
such
degree.
ideas if the parents are very particular about having a backup degree?
Sure.
So
The point is,
yeah.
such programs usually cost way higher. So, if they're okay with that, for sure,
If it
why
suits their
not?
budget.
Yeah, if it suits,
I mean,
if it suits their budget, why not?
That's one of the things I personally tell
Yeah.
my students when
Yeah.
they come in. We have, I work for a global academy with a
Yeah.
number of locations
Yeah.
across
Yeah.
the globe, and
Yeah.
some of our locations do have.
all right.
Yes, but you're right. It is
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
same amount. It
Yeah.
adds a big
Yep.
amount of money.
Yep.
But if I meet a mother and father who's telling the son, no, let's go do a 3-year bachelor's degree and then 3 years later come back and look for a flight school, I tell them maybe those flight school
Yeah.
options are now they're actually going to spend money on doing a bachelor's for 3
Right.
years, extra time and money,
Right,
and
right,
then
right.
1 year training.
Yeah.
So with such parents, I always tell them, look for an option. There are
Right.
lots of good flight
Yeah.
schools who
Yeah.
have a 3 years bachelor's combined with the
Yep.
pilot training, so you're saving time and money.
Yep.
That is
Yeah.
that is one option I would suggest to people.
And that option is way more suitable for persons who want to initially do a flying career and eventually switch
Yeah.
to a ground
More management
more
role in an
management
airport,
roles,
yeah.
or more of a ground job, or even some people choose to do aerospace technology.
Yeah.
Then they get to work in airplane manufacturers like
Yes,
Airbus,
yes.
Boeings, or something like that. We had some of the instructors at the flight school we flew from. They were on that stream where they did a bachelor's degree with their pilot's license. So there it is.
Do you think it's going to ever happen in India that it becomes a requirement that you have to have a bachelor's? Do you think in future it might happen? Because I can see it has happened in Turkey already.
Yeah.
So
And,
as of now, there's no requirement, but
Yeah.
And you don't see that happening?
No, certain airlines do prefer graduates.
Okay. Oh wow.
Okay.
Prefer, but not
Prefer,
required.
Not required.
Okay. Because right now Turkey.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
I was recently in
Uh-huh.
Turkey. Last year twice. I was
Right.
I was helping
Right.
our team set up the
Right.
complete academy.
Yeah.
So I don't work just as an instructor. I've
Yeah.
also worked in training the
Okay.
teams and setting
Okay.
up the new branches.
Understood.
So in Turkey, I was shocked. Last year, I found out that all Turkish nationals, all Turkish airline carriers
Right.
require all of their pilots moving forward to have a bachelor's degree. And then recently, I was told Etihad
Yeah.
asked even their captains who were already captains with them who didn't have bachelor's degrees to go apply for a bachelor's
Correct.
degree, even if it was an
Correct.
online degree or a. So, do you
Correct.
see that happening anytime soon in the next 20 years with the Indian DGCA?
Less likely, but I cannot. I mean, I do not have any
Sure.
information
Sure.
to give an opinion about that because, it would be a vague opinion.
Obviously, we don't have a we don't have a crystal ball, as they say,
crystal,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
But what I would
The-
also say is because of the pilot shortage right now in India,
It is less
I
likely
feel
to-
it's less likely
to-
because now
Yes.
the DGCA, the Indian Civil Aviation are all very clear about how we need massive number of pilots.
That's correct.
And we're not going to be able to meet that demand.
Yeah.
Now, if we add requirements which
Yeah.
are obstacles,
Yeah.
I don't think so. They're
Yeah.
going to go down that route.
And another part in India about there is a course called as BSc Aviation. If
Mhm.
you have a CPL, commercial pilot's license,
Mhm.
then you don't have to attend college.
Wow.
And you can directly give the
Give the
exams.
exams.
And
That's amazing.
syllabus, there is a lot of syllabus overlap
Sure.
between DGCA exams
Sure.
and BSc Aviation. So in that case, what happens is usually airline pilots go for the exams when the exams are there and get their degrees.
Makes total sense.
So
And the
yeah.
duration is also reduced to 2 years.
Yeah.
So basically, they get credits for it.
Yes.
Yeah, they
Just
get
like
credits.
most of the international
yeah,
universities
Yeah,
would do.
correct. That's how
So
it is.
this is just information for you guys out there. Maybe someone, this might be very useful.
Yeah,
Someone
yeah.
wants that bachelor's degree to convince their parents to let them start the
Yeah,
pilot training.
Yeah,
And again, like
Definitely.
he was telling you guys, we're just giving you all the options out
Yeah.
there. We're not telling you this is better than this or this is better than this, but you need to make a well-informed
Yeah.
decision. And
Yeah.
that's why we're doing these sessions to make sure we educate the masses.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me. And I think it was a brilliant session. I hope all of you have learned something new today. And if you have more questions, I'm sure contact us, comment below, and we'll be more than happy to answer any
Yes.
more questions you
Yeah.
have.
Thank you for your time. You have made some time out of your busy schedule for this podcast, and to share your insights about flying in Dubai, to share your insights with student from an instructor's point of view. So thank you for that, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And if anyone of our audiences want to get in touch with you, how can they?
I think I'm more active on Instagram, pilot
Okay.
_ Rizwan Taj. That's
Okay.
probably the best way to reach me.
Absolutely.
I have a small YouTube page, but I haven't started,
Okay.
posting it
Posting
much.
videos.
But then,
Yeah.
yes, I do have plans. Hopefully soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, Instagram, pilot _ Rizwan Taj. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Yep,
once again
yep.
for having me, and all the best with your next endeavors. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you so much. Big round
Thank
of
you.
applause to
Next time
guys.
we can meet in training center.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yep. All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're the fun